Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform to help people network and connect through their affinity groups, whether it's athletes, whether it's college alumni, it could be business alumni. But this show is based on, we talk to former collegiate and professional athletes and talk about their journey out of sports. And today, athletes transition out of sports is a major issue, whether it's financial literacy, mental health. And this show is all about teaching aspiring athletes that there is, in fact, life after sports. So real excited today to have another Blue Hen, Ivory Sully. How you doing, Ivory?
Hey, Rob, how you doing, man? Good to be with you. Thank you for thinking about me and
Uh,
and letting me come on your show.
you're welcome. Yeah. So this is we've had former NFL quarterback Scott Bruner. Ivory himself was a former NFL player. We also had a baseball player Pete Mistralis and a swimmer Corey Camp. So we've had four Blue Hens now, along with me doing the show. So this is great. So Ivory's background, he played college football at the University of Delaware. Then he went on to have a great NFL career, played 9 years, mostly with the Los Angeles Rams, played a little bit with Tampa and the Lions. And then when he got out of football, he went into the fashion space, which I'll talk a little bit about. But ultimately today, he has Sully Executive Services, and it's all about IP and branding. So he'll tell us all about that. But I always like to start out, Ivory, talk about playing sports growing up and how that shaped you leading up into high school and college.
You know what? Thank you, first of all, for giving me the platform to tell you this story, because I think that these stories can be formative for certain people, and I really do. I was born in the country in Maryland, okay, on the eastern shore of Maryland, in a town called Berlin, Maryland. We didn't have any organized sports of any type, and it was just basically play in your backyard and figure out, make up games and do whatever you had to do. I used to watch the Baltimore Orioles and the Baltimore Colts play football. Johnny Unitas for the Colts, and Brooks Robinson for the Orioles. And we didn't know any of the rules. But what we did was we used our mind, and we kind of made it look like we knew what we were doing. Anyway, I went from that situation in Maryland, which I will have to tell you was a bit of a segregated situation, and I learned a lot of things really early in my life. I went to a school that was integrated, newly integrated. We were one of four black kids in the entire elementary school. I was wondering why people are looking at me all so crazy and stuff like that. But the bottom line was my dad was a country doctor. He was a general practitioner, and he served the African American community in that Eastern Shore for about 150 miles, and he had his services for the African American community to go to. We saw things because he was a practitioner. He had an office at the house. We saw things in the middle of the night that most kids don't see, because people coming in with let's just say injuries from being roughed up a little bit during the night. And, we learned the life lessons that we needed to have, and we humbled ourselves quickly to say that we needed to help, that my dad was helping people and stuff like that. So that's the basis that I started my sports career with, that I was lucky to have an opportunity to play sports. So that was huge. It wasn't like other people. I had an opportunity. We moved to New Jersey when I was 10 years old. And when you move to New Jersey by New York, there's organized sports. Got involved with organized sports. I actually learned how to play these sports. And I wanted to play any sport and every sport that I could possibly play. Anything that I can get into. I got into tennis and swimming and diving and baseball and all the stuff. Anything that I could get to that had a ball and a bat or had athleticism involved with it, that's what I was getting involved with. And it was a blessing. That was a blessing, and I was so glad to have the opportunity to do it. And because I was so glad and humbled, I gave always everything that I had in my body to do the job, okay? So ended up being the fact that I wasn't allowed to play football because my dad was a doctor, didn't want me to get hurt. And they wouldn't let me play football until my junior year in high school, where my best friend there in New Jersey interceded. His mom called my mom and asked if I could play football. And after she said that, I got allowed to play football, the game was on. I mean, it was all over. Now, mind you, already in high school, I had been a state sectional champ in tennis. I had, won, multiple gold medals in track and field. I had done a lot of stuff. I played summer baseball. The Phillies drafted me in the 17th round. I didn't want to play baseball. I didn't want to run track. I didn't want to play tennis. I didn't want to swim. I wanted to play football. Football was it. And so once I was allowed to play football, so it was like, that waiting period, it caused an actual hurricane in my heart when I got finally offered the opportunity to play football, and it was on, and that was it. So that was when that was my takeoff, my junior and senior year. After my junior year, I went to a camp that a guy that some Blue Hens might know, Tubby Raymond, had a camp. I went to Tubby Raymond's camp, and I wanted to see and put my skills up and wanted to see if I could compete and wanted to enhance my skills. Well, after that camp, my junior year, and I was going into my senior year, Tubby put me on his map. Now, back then, I went to a school that had 800 kids, 8 through 12. So not a lot of scouts were coming to see me play football, especially after my first year as a junior. But I made all league and all county in my first year. And then I, did the same thing in my senior year. The thing about it is that the thing about it is that I had an opportunity to actually play the game, get on Tubby Raymond's list. There was no scholarship coming. That wasn't going to happen. So I lived in another world, again, a humble world. I was just lucky and glad to be there. So Tubby did not forget about me, brought me into Delaware, didn't have a scholarship, walked on, and ended up starting when I was a sophomore. And that's where my whole career took off. And it was on after that.
That's a great story, and I can appreciate that, and it's interesting because a lot of the athletes I talk about, it seems like some of them didn't start playing like yourself until high school, yet ended up being star athletes and going on through college and ultimately professionally. So one of the things that I always ask about is, as we talked about, just the whole idea of athletes transitioning out of sports, and you'll share that later, your journey, but when you were at school, and I know times are different now, was there any education, about that as far as, financial literacy, mental health, things to that nature?
And transitioning and being of a sound mind, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay, no, there wasn't. And basically, I truly believe that was established by Coach Raymond for me, because I don't know if you've ever sat at a Coach Raymond team meeting. This guy was an orator, and he spoke to you in terms that were real. They weren't things out of the realm of reality. First of all, you're talking to a guy that had won X amount of national championships. The year before I went there, they were in the championship game. And everything that came out of his mouth, the guys in the room hung on. And he taught us the basics of being a man, standing up for yourself, doing the right thing by your teammates, and basically handed that stuff to us on a platter, and we executed it, and it just came out on the field. We, if you don't remember, ran the wing T, which is a very disciplined offense. You had to understand every nuance to run it correctly. So he had to have the people in the room that could understand the actual format of how you had to think you actually had to listen to Tubby Raymond. You couldn't like go through a whole meeting, maybe catch about 5 minutes of what the coach is saying, and then go out and play. That wasn't what was going on at Tubby with Tubby. He actually told us stuff, and then he would interject things that were good for our life sustainability and understanding about how it was in the real world. And I used to love when he started to change it up. He would come in and he was an artist as well, and he would draw things on the board. Just watching him draw, I was enchanted with that. But he had a story behind everything, and he always gave the message, and the message was to be responsible, to be a man, to be accountable, to actually think about somebody except yourself, to think of the guy next to you. All the basic stuff that really could empower a group of people. And that's why we were a good team.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I think that's probably, especially back then and even today, I think the running theme is if you've got a good coach or coaching staff that works with the athletes, I mean, that's part of the education right there. And some of the things we're talking about, like I talked to a former college football player, and he said it in more modern time than when you and I were playing sports. But he talks about how it would have been great if there was a workshop, maybe a 4-week workshop or some type of curriculum built in to the athletic department that kind of helped athletes going forward. So I think it's definitely times have changed. I think there's schools are making efforts for that, and that's some of the things that we're trying to help out as well. Kind of fast forwarding, just piggybacking off of that question. What are there things that from an NFL perspective, and I know again it spans different age gaps of players today, but maybe as an NFL alumni, are there programs that you see out there that are geared towards kind of helping athletes once they're done with their careers?
That's a really good question, brother. That is a really good question. And I will tell you that there are certain things that when I was in the NFL, I was an NFL player rep. So for the union, for the NFLPA, was the representative for the Rams in doing that. Part of our prerogative was to create programs and to create a space where there was somewhere for us to go when we did retire, because it was unbelievable. Before 1979, we went on strike in 1982, and I remember this. There were no programs open and leveled for players after they retired from the game. It is unbelievable how far behind the NFL used to be. Now there are situations that are set up for players, okay? And even they reached back and got some programs prepared for us and our generation, which was the one that actually went and implemented the programs that these players are taking advantage of now. And God bless them, they're making millions and millions of dollars. We made thousands and thousands of dollars. There was a different time and a different place. But being the player rep and being involved in the negotiating process, I had a unique perspective in seeing this and looking at that. And the most important thing was get these guys set so that they can benefit later on when they retire and not have to take on the program that we had to deal with.
Yeah, no, and that's great. And again, I mean, I think now more than ever, it's seeing that problem. I think it's being addressed. Let's talk a little bit about alumni connections. So something obviously I'm passionate about. Here's a great scenario of two alumni talking to each other. But when you were at Delaware, were there alumni coming back and kind of working with the athletes, not from a sport perspective, but more from a mentoring or jobs? I mean, did you see that? And then also the second question off of that will be, are they reaching out to folks like yourself today?
There were a few. I will tell you, there was a need for guys like that to do that. I will never forget the great Nate Beasley, running back for the University of Delaware, national champion, great running back, just fantastic. He came on campus a couple of times when I was there, and he just motivated me to no end, for crying out loud. Didn't talk a lot, was a quiet guy, but just being around the guy Nate Beasley, who everybody knew to be the great one. I mean, I hang on every word that they say. They, I'll tell you, there was a time that some of the guys, not a lot of the guys that played there came back to give back, but we had a program where Roman Gabriel, I don't know if you know that guy, who that is. That's the former Los Angeles Rams great quarterback. Roman Gabriel and a program director came back in to show us how to maintain our flexibility, because flexibility meant that you had a chance to have a good life. If once your muscle seize up, that's it, it's all over. So we had guys like that coming in to speak to us, that really did have a name and stuff like that. And that was set up by Coach Raymond. And we would actually benefit from times like that when we could actually garner some of the lessons that were learned by them, and they could drop them on us. So it's a little bit different. It's a lot different these days. I think that they're being much more proactive these days than they were back in those days. I'll be frank with you.
Yeah, and that's good. And I think it's something it's important. And we really encourage not only athletes, but people in general, tap into that alumni base. I think there's a lot of alumni that are willing to help. And I think sometimes, maybe, people are hyper focused on their sport, so they might not reach out as much, but we definitely encourage that. And I guess that kind of leads into another area too, would be networking and connecting. So talk a little bit about the importance of that, and doing it still while you're playing.
And I learned this lesson as I got along into the process, and I actually figured out that knowing people is very important, and giving back and reaching back is very important. I saw the value of this when I was a player rep, especially with the Rams, and the reasons why we had to secure these programs for players going forward so that they could have a sustainable and a viable earning potential, or they would be in position where they could retire without distress. There's not a lot of there, we were the generation that kind of had to figure that all out. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I lose my energy. I lost my energy for it. And I look back now, and I think to the fact that, if there wasn't a generation like our generation, if there weren't those, like, say, strikes that we went on, and there was two of them, 82 and 87, that changed the whole forecast of everything to come. If we didn't have that, and I didn't give those two, because quite frankly, I gave up game checks. I gave up 10 game checks and for these guys coming in the future. And I just, that there's something that I feel that sentiment doesn't exist right now to reach back and pull some of us out to a certain positioning, and so that we're okay. Well, help the brothers that got us here. Help the brothers that got us here. And I'm sorry, but I went on a tangent. Your question was, what was it again? Now I'm sorry.
That's okay. More about just the importance of networking and connecting, and something that I kind of always throw in there. I was talking to an agent, and he said the biggest issue they see is that the best time to network and connect is when you're still playing. And unfortunately, a lot of athletes don't do that. And so then they're done, and all of a sudden, like, okay, here, bring it on. And then nothing's there because they didn't build those relationships that they could have, while playing.
100% right. 100% right. I absolutely do have a circle of a core circle of friends. I used to play against Ronnie Lott. Ronnie Lott from the USC. Ronnie is a great friend of mine. Where we used to make connections and reach and become friendly, for me, was at the Pro Bowl after the season. And I just like going to get away to Hawaii and stuff like that. But I met so many guys, Andre Reed and Ronnie Lott and Joe Montana and all these guys that I could just pick up the phone right now today and talk to. How are you doing? How are you dealing with things? I talk to my friends, my old teammates. I talk to people that I played against. These people are still reaching back to me in Detroit, seeing how I'm doing, and that is key. How how did I do that? Absolutely, I did that because obviously I went into the clothing business. I had to get the discipline to do that. So it was invaluable to reach back or to reach over and pick up the daggone phone and talk to people. And right now we have a great culture at the Rams because the Rams invite former players in. And so we call all of our former player friends and we say, hey man, are you going to this game? Go to this game so we can hang out. It's so important to just reach back. Just reach back and see if you're able to reach back and to connect people. That is one of the most important things that you could do to make this thing really viable.
Yeah, and that's great advice, and I think that's important for athletes to note. What Ivory was saying there is just be open to just meeting people and embracing people
Yeah,
and helping others, because obviously it's a big part of networking. Connecting is the kind of paying it forward, not just looking at what's in it for yourself, but how can serve other people.
absolutely.
So
100%.
yeah, one of the areas, and we talked a little bit offline about it, and you'll share your thoughts on it, is obviously today NIL, name, image, likeness, is a big thing, and back when you were playing, didn't exist. Back when I was in school, it wasn't a thing, but now that it is, give me your thoughts, both positive and negative, about it.
Wow. That you opened up the can of worms there, buddy. Let me tell you. NIL is really interesting for me. First of all, because I'm in intellectual property, and that's what I do for a living. I help brands build themselves up through licensing and the sort. So I've got a branding background, and I'm looking at these brands that are throwing money into the colleges now, which, by the way, I think is an excellent thing to have happen. Sorry to tell you, everybody else, but the players, we're kind of the ones that make the game, and bring a lot of money into those universities, to the universities. Okay, let's just be real about that. They're finally leveling the playing field, and the guys that deserve to be remunerated or at least have things made easier for them, they're finally getting their due. And I think that it's been long overdue, that time, that guys are being paid, the college kids are being paid. I do kind of look at the Alabama quarterback. I forget his name right now. That he's got
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young. $4 million out of the box. Are you kidding me? Are you serious right now? That's wild. But you know, he he has helped. He is going to help put that. He helped put that program on another level. He just really did. And so does he deserve it? Of course he is, because that's the monetization of for universities, and they need to share the wealth with the people that are most important to it. Now, the only problem that I have with NIL is, and it's unfortunate, but if you haven't had it, and now all of a sudden you have it, you get put into a position where you kind of sometimes make a little bit of decision. Let's just say bad decisions, okay, with your money, okay, and that can happen. And there should be programs on. I believe there has to be programs at the schools to let people know how to handle their newfound fortunes, which they really do need to have. I am all for the thing where the brands are coming in, they're putting money in for the players. The players are the many of them that never had any of those resources, that they're finally getting their just due. And I'm really with that.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think the biggest challenge is you brought up is the kind of the education behind it. And I guess that's anything because we'll transition over. I mean, talking about transition out of sports, but I think it's just that whole financial literacy piece and all that, and just having
Yes.
social media and things to that nature. I think if there's the education out there, that's certainly going to help. So let's talk about your transition. So you basically had two transitions out of sports in a sense. One is you're going from playing college football to transitioning into an NFL. So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about once you're done playing in the NFL.
Yes. Um, I was just like I didn't get a scholarship to go to college. I was a free agent and did not get drafted. So basically, I think the Lord's trying to tell me, dude, you got to earn it. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to earn it. And I did earn it. And I walked on. I made the Rams roster. And, I had to do it on my own. I was the last one out of the back corner of the locker room in preseason football. That's where all the free agents were stuffed. We had an overflow of free agents, and I was the last one out of the corner, man. After the cuts were all done, and so I'm proud of myself for that because I did earn it, and I found out some stuff about myself that I can do this, and transitioning from college to the pros is an entirely different thing. You're on your own, bro, when you get to the pros. Okay, let's just really be honest. There's people there to steer you, but they're single-minded, and that is let's get to the Super Bowl. I was fortunate enough in my rookie year to go to the Super Bowl in Pasadena against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was brilliant, but I also learned that there was no other way than their way to get to the Super Bowl, and you had to sacrifice what your teammates told you to sacrifice. So it was kind of easy for me because they laid it out for me. I didn't have to search it out and figure it out. I just had to do what they freaking told me, and I did. And I had a successful transition from college, in which we played in the national championship game and lost, unfortunately, to the Super Bowl, in which we made it to the Super Bowl and lost. I don't know what that means. I hope it doesn't mean it, not too hard of a reflection on me, but the bottom line was that there was absolutely a difference in the level of expectation in a player. You were expected to do this. Eddie Brown, I'll never forget it. I came off the field in the last game of the season, and I had a little ankle nick. Okay, and Eddie Brown, who was a defensive back, a veteran, 10-year vet, he walked up to me and he told me, he looked at me and he says, "So how's your ankle?" I said, "Well, I don't know. It's all right, I guess." I said, he told me, he said, "You better be ready. And that's all I got to tell you. And get it right." And he didn't even say, there was no he didn't mince his words. He said, "You have to be ready. And that's it. Or else you're out." And that was it. So okay, Eddie, I got you, bro. And I made it. That's the difference between college and pro sports. All right.
And now take us through just now, you've had this illustrious playing career, and once your playing career is over in the NFL, talk about just, maybe the challenges or just your transition out, and perhaps give some advice to athletes that are in a similar situation, whether it's transitioning out of college or if they're fortunate like yourself to playing professionally.
There is a situation where transitioning out of football, because it's what you've known for so long and for so many years, and based on the fact that you have to figure out what you're going to be passionate or love that much. I think the key to people being successful is when they do what they're passionate about, and they can give every ounce of everything that they have in them. I figured out some things over a period of time. It took me about a year and a half to 2 years before I could even think to the thing that would make me feel as passionate as I did about athletics and sports. I figured and looked at myself one day, and there was always a come to Jesus day where you have to look at it and say, okay, here's my life. what do I love? What do I really, really love? To the point where I would give up stuff to do it. And I looked in my closet, and I had a lot of clothes. And I said, man, I really love clothes. So I actually, this is how I got into the apparel business. I was a gym rat. I loved going to the gym. So I put the two together. I made these pairs of pants that had elastic waist, elastic bottom, and they were printed. And they were called, and my company was called Ego Sportswear. I made these pants, and I made millions of these stupid pants. But I'll tell you, they sold. And I found myself in another trade, in another lifetime, in another direction. And it just came out of love, basically, for the two things that I really enjoy, being at the gym and having clothes, aside from playing football. And so I went from that, and I transitioned after that. Then I had the appetite to look into this and delve into this a little bit more, and actually look for the next step in what was to come. So I owned my company. I owned my company for a while. I got tired of owning the company, quite frankly, because all the pressure is on you. You have to make everything happen. You have to pay your employees. Yeah, everything is on you. So I wanted to actually go and work on the other side of things, which is the branding side, or what we call intellectual property. Okay, so you take for example, the intellectual property uh, uh, for Mercedes Benz is Mercedes Benz. That they're a brand that is known for something, and their intellectual property is astounding. Okay, so what I did was I helped people that had a brand and they did something. I helped them build their brand through licensing and getting people to come on and produce accessories and goods that related back to their brand. And I built up some brands in a big way. I worked for a company called Beverly Hills Polo Club, which was an international conglomerate. And we traveled the world, and nobody's heard of it really here. Maybe you have heard of Beverly Hills Polo Club, but it was okay here domestically, but internationally, it was huge. We had a $300 million business. And I was like, wow, where did this all come from? This intellectual property thing is real. And so I did that. And then I moved on to actually to a company called Pelly Pelly, which was leather jackets. And I built, a multi-million dollar business internationally for Pelly Pelly. And so I said, this is great. I'm helping companies. I'm passionate about it. I'm helping people. And so let's just go with this. And that's what I've been doing the last, I don't know how many years since I retired.
That's great. That's great. So talk a little bit about you covered most of it, but so your company now, your services, who like talk about some of the different, your clients that you're looking for, and I'll give you your, as I always say, that corporate commercial, so to speak, and then ultimately, how can people find you?
Sully Executive Services is my company. And with Sully Executive Services, I'm basically applying all of the lessons that I learned through the years in developing brands, building brands, manufacturing, whatever it might be. I have a full range and a full vision of what it takes to actually do that. And what I do is, I just got off a call, before we got on, helping a new brand find its wheels and putting it on the map, and how to best do that. Do that based on their economics. What do they have to put into it, and how much they're willing to sacrifice? Are they willing to go the distance, or is it just a hobby? There are two different things, and it always comes up when you're dealing in this business, in the fashion business. There's a hobby, and then there's a job, and there's a business. I deal with helping people develop their business and growing their business based on relationships that I have in the market. Again, the thing that we talked about before, and reaching back and looking and talking to the people that we used to play with and play against. It's so important, and it's helped me build a base for my business to grow. So that was a great question, and I have an answer for you. And that's what the deal is. That's what I do now. I take advantage of those relationships.
That's great. So, and how can people find you? I mean, we're going to put this in the show notes, but I always go a little old school with the internet or email or things to that nature.
I am at ivorysully.com. Very easy. Boom.
That works, and you can find us on alumnidirect.com. You can follow the show on our YouTube channel, as well as we're on all across the major podcasts. So I encourage people to follow it. There's just great guests like Ivory that really share some meaningful topics relating to helping athletes transition out of sports. And I think it's we really want to make an impact, and hopefully you enjoyed this and look forward to having people in future episodes. So Ivory, thanks again. It was great, especially being a fellow Blue Hen.
Hey man, I certainly hope that I can help one person at least. Okay. And I hope that my words, did resonate with people. And thank you for asking me to do this. I
Uh,
appreciate it.
you're welcome. It's been a pleasure.